My name is Paige Betterman, and the poem I want to delve deeper into today is one that I stumbled across by accident. This poem is not one I may have found without this wonderful project, but in any case, I'm so glad I did, because the more I learn about Walt Whitman, the more I grow to really admire and appreciate the courage and effort he put into his writing. So, without further ado, this is Poetry Unbound. The poet we will be referencing today is Walt Whitman, commonly known as the father of free verse. He is a remarkably influential poet, essayist, journalist, and otherwise forward thinker of his time. I Saw in Louisiana a Live Oak Growing is one of 389 subsequent poems, plus 2 additional writings that Whitman was able to publish in his Leaves of Grass collection throughout his life. With as much hardship and controversy as one might imagine for a man who used his literary talent to advocate for change in a closed-minded culture, he worked tirelessly to create a world where people could freely explore their own identities. Walt Whitman embraced the Romantic movement to express controversial social issues that lean towards the modern democratic side that we have today. The following poem details a man that sees himself in a lonely oak tree in Louisiana. He takes a memento of this tree that, in contrast to him, flourishes unbeknownst to its empty home in a bayou. As a reminder to not shrink in the absence of others, he keeps it safe with him until he has the courage to do the same. I saw in Louisiana a live oak growing. All alone stood it, and the moss hung down from the branches. Without any companion it grew there, uttering joyous leaves of dark green. And its look, rude, unbending, lusty, made me think of myself. But I wondered how it could utter joyous leaves, standing alone there without its friend, for I knew I could not. And I broke off a twig with a certain number of leaves upon it, and twined it around a little moss, and brought it away, and I've placed it inside of my room. It is not needed to remind me as of my own dear friends, for I believe lately I think of little else than of them. Yet it remains to me a curious token. It makes me think of manly love. For all that, and though the live oak glistens there in Louisiana, solitary in a wide flat space, uttering joyous leaves, all its life without a friend, a lover near, I know very well I could not. Whitman chooses this setting to specifically juxtapose the mundane, ordinary speaker, a man who is easily relatable to his audience. A man that resonates so strongly with something very grounded and similarly ordinary in comparison to the home of Mardi Gras celebrations, rich cuisine, and diverse cultural heritage. This oak tree stands strong in its roots, unneeding of others, the aforementioned friends, to thrive and live prosperously. It does not require people to tell it how to grow its leaves or stand large and strong. No, it finds strength in figuring it out for itself. This form of independence is what the speaker searches for. The tree branch is a symbol of independence and the search for inner peace that the speaker is on a journey to find. I believe the symbolic search the speaker finds himself on is an illusion, hinting at an absence of self within the speaker. And when he compares this branch to manly love, I believe it is a search for acceptance to a part of himself that he is not yet ready to acknowledge, especially in a world where it is frowned upon to be different, to be homosexual. He knows he would be ostracized if he were to accept the fact of his romantic inclinations, so he sets out to understand how a rude, unbending, and lusty being such as himself could find peace in being alone and independent. I think what he finds, while encouraging, still frightens him, because he is not yet ready to thrive and prosper as his true self. I know very well I could not, he says. His thoughts are still pointed outwards, concerned on how others will view him. It is not needed to remind me as of my own dear friends, for I believe lately I think of little else than of them, he ends.
As we take another deeper dive into this poem, we can find that Walt Whitman chooses to use a variety of different descriptors to paint an image that further strengthens his idea that companionship is a necessity in the lives of us all. Found twice in the poem, Walt Whitman chooses to repeat the phrase "uttering joyous leaves" twice, once in the beginning and the second near the end. Around these two instances, he speaks in a similar but different manner about how he perceives the oak tree. In the first instance, we encounter the phrase "uttering joyous." It's paired with the sentence, "Without any companion it grew there, uttering joyous leaves of dark green." Here Whitman is portraying the visual of a man who is shocked that this magnificent being could possibly live without the presence of another. I interpret this first instance as the character being in awe of the tree's existence. This very first instance of the tree proceeds to make him question things about himself, question things about human nature, if we ourselves are capable of living as this oak tree is, content and happy to be alone, with no companionship. At the end of the poem, the character has this tree branch taken from the tree, and he reflects on last time of the tree loneliness, uttering joyous leaves all its life without a friend, a lover near. In the second instance of the trees uttering joyous, the man sounds much more envious of this ability that the tree has to be happy alone. As humans, it's a necessity in our lives to be cared for and to have connections with everything. That's how us as humans thrive our lives. It's simply a series of different connections with different people, friends, lovers. But nature doesn't need these connections in order to thrive. Without a friend or lover near, the oak tree grows big and strong. This is why the main character of the story is so envious of nature, because he can never be content with being truly alone.
This poem takes so much inspiration from so many different philosophies. Romanticism, humanism, naturalism, and transcendentalism are all identifiable in his homage to Whitman's own journey to understand his identity. In this line, "Without any companion it grew there, uttering joyous leaves of dark green," a romantical essence is conveyed through the idealized seclusion that this oak tree inspires. It speaks to the naturalistic and transcendental themes by communicating continuous growth rather than a decline, when independent of others and in nature. I believe that, in testament to Whitman's own beliefs, he means for this poem to speak to people in a way that expresses how strong and resilient they are on their own. The strength in their own identities that can only be found individually. Each person has it within themselves to find out what kind of joyous leaves they are capable of.
Reading this poem, it really makes me think about how vital it is in our world that we as humans have those connections with others, and how much those connections affect us in our everyday lives. It reminded me a lot of a movie I watched a couple years ago called I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. Strange movie title for sure, but the message behind it is very sweet, and it's actually one of my favorite movies. In this film, the main character is diagnosed with a terminal illness, and she writes in this journal titled Living with Death. She writes about all her various activities with everyone and everything she does. Eventually, she dies, but before she does, she writes a letter to the main character. In this letter, she addresses the idea that she's come up with. Life is defined as connections with others. Without connections, you haven't truly lived. It's an interesting idea that I have to agree with. In the poem, it relates back to these same ideas. Humans need connections to live and thrive. I can also relate a lot to the man in the poem, as there have been times in my life where I wanted to run away and hide from all my problems and all the people in my life. I wanted to be alone for what felt like forever, sulk away in my room, but I couldn't. The people in my life dragged me out of my state of loneliness and solitude and made me spend time with them, get out of my depressive state. The only way I was able to get out of my head was to have those connections with others. It was through people I was able to get better and be happy again. I longed to be like the tree in the poem, happy with being completely alone. But that could never happen for me. If I were left alone like the tree, I would instead grow more depressed, more sad. It's those human connections in our lives that would define us as humans and keep us happy and thriving members of society. What nature can do, us humans cannot. We crave and live off of love, family, and friendship. I saw in Louisiana a live oak growing. All alone stood it, and the moss hung down from the branches. Without any companion it grew there, uttering joyous leaves of dark green, and its look rude, unbending, lusty, made me think of myself. But I wondered how it could utter joyous leaves standing there alone, without its friend near, for I knew I could not. And I broke off a twig with a certain number of leaves upon it, and twined around a little moss, and brought it away, and I have placed it inside of my room. It is not needed to remind me as of my own dear friends, for I believe lately I think of little else than them. Yet it remains to me a curious token. It makes me think of manly love. For all that, and though that live oak tree glistens there in Louisiana solitary in a wide flat space, uttering joyous leaves all its life, without a friend, a lover near, I know very well I could not.